welcome you to the Northwest Society's musical event this year. And by gollies, they're asking us steel guitar players if we would like to do something. And we said, you dang right, we'd love to get up there and do a little thing for you. And what we've done is collected some of the finest steel guitar players, the two best steel guitar players in this part of the country, an old scrub from Muskogee here. And we're going to try to do a little thing for you this morning. It's going to be somewhat educational and hopefully very entertaining for you. Through the years, we've all of us have been at one time or other on the bandstand, and folks have come up and they said, "What is that thing? What is that thing you're playing there?" And you say to them, "Well, it's a steel guitar." And they say, "Well, what's a steel guitar?" They don't, you know. So we thought this morning what we might do, and there's many people that are that way that don't really know what about steel guitar. They know about violins, guitars, trumpets, etc. Steel guitar is kind of relatively new in the music industry, and I thought maybe today we could do a little evolution of the steel guitar for you, and of course mix in a lot of good songs of those years that it's been in the development. And of course we have to start off with Hawaii. That's where steel guitar really got started, was in Hawaii. A guy named Sal Hiope, or how you say that name, was the first guy that ever played a steel guitar. He raised the strings on a regular guitar, tuned it up a little bit different than what they do a guitar, and started playing it. And it became very popular in Hawaii. And Hawaiian music became kind of the stalwart for the steel guitar. He came to Los Angeles and did some things. But one of the things that we want to do for you this morning to show that how the Hawaiian thing went is we're going to do a little Hawaiian song for you, a little thing called Coconut Grove. And Red, you count us off. Coconut Grove. The young man from Hawaii, though, that come up with that stuff, came to Los Angeles and made a lot of recordings with his lap steel guitar. They called it about that particular time. And there was a young man that lived down in the, well, he was born and raised in Oklahoma, where all us great musicians come from. Anyway, thank you. There's an Okie over there. I like him. Anyway, this gentleman was named Bob Dunn. He was a jazz trombonist, believe it or not. Played jazz for years on the trombone up in all from Chicago all the way to Dallas and that area and through there, down into Houston. And he fell in love with the sounds that Sal Hope, I wish I could say that, but I can't, was playing on his lap steel guitar. And Bob Dunn was a very innovative person. He not only played the jazz, which is meant he was a very proficient musician by being able to play jazz on trombone. That's not the easiest thing in the world to do. But anyway, he liked the sound so well on the lap steel guitar that he started working with a electronics pickup. He was kind of into this electronics world, and they built a pickup and a little amplifier, and Bob Dunn put it on his lap steel guitar and started playing it there in South Texas. And he eventually wound up, he played with Milton Brown and the Brownies and, I don't know, I can't remember all the big Western swing guys that were down in that part of the world. But he was the first guy in the world, and I'm saying the first guy in the world, that ever recorded a song using an electrified instrument. And it became very popular, and he went on to just become one of the greatest steel guitar players in that part of the world. And out of that came a guy that just loved what Bob Dunn was doing, and he started fooling around with this lap steel guitar with the pickup and the little amplifier. I remember those days the amplifiers were about like this, you know. Now they got these monsters. But anyway, that's a little side point. But this guy became one of the greatest and the most famous steel guitar players around in that particular time, and way many years, and even today people still talk about it. And he wound up working with this young man called Bob Wills, and they went on to become probably the greatest Western swing band there was. But this guy came out and wrote this song, and he wrote it, it's called Steel Guitar Rag. And we're going to do that for you. We get Pat or Jimmy to kick that off. old steel guitar rag, you know, it's been around all these years. My goodness sakes, if you stop and think about it, that thing was probably first recorded back in 36, 37, somewhere in there with Bob Wills. And of course, you all remember old Bob saying, "Take it away, Leon." And that song has been with us for the years, and people still come up almost every job you play. You get a request to do steel guitar rag. But anyway, out of all that, of course, Bob Wills was the guy that had Leon working for him, and he hired many of the great musicians that have come on to be icons in our business. But this was back in the 30s, and Bob finally he had the Light Crust Doughboys and groups like that down in Texas, and they finally run him out of Texas. They didn't want him in Texas, I guess. Anyway, he came to Oklahoma, and he went to Tulsa. And he ran onto this gentleman in Tulsa that got him involved with the Cain's Academy, they call it. It was the Cain's Academy of Dancing there in Tulsa, and that eventually became the home of Bob Wills. He was there every Saturday night doing a dance, and boy, I remember you couldn't get into the place. It was just packed. But anyway, things went well for Bob and the boys. They traveled a little bit, not much. They didn't have to go very far. They'd drive all the way to Wichita, Kansas every once in a while to do a job. My goodness, 150 miles away, you know, that was a big deal for them. But anyway, along came Adolf Hitler. And that kind of messed up the music business back in 1942 through 45 in that area. And but out of that area, I mean, the way it messed it up, what I was driving at was many of the bands, guys were drafted into the service. Many of them, all of them wanted to volunteer. I know I've heard stories that most of Bob's guys all went to the draft or to the recruiting stations just right after the war started there, and were volunteering, and Leon and all of them did that. But anyway, out of those war years came some of the greatest songs that we probably, us swing people that is in particular, have been playing, and they were just great songs. All the big movies, the musicals that they made, the instrumentation that they used was absolutely outstanding in that era. But the problem with the steel guitar player, we only had 6 strings and we had a pickup on it. And we could not duplicate some of those sounds of those big bands, and it was driving these guys nuts. Well, the first thing they did, they built a guitar and they put 8 strings on it. Well, that was a significant improvement for the steel guitar players. And then the next guy come along, he built one with 2 necks on it, with two sets of 8 strings on each neck, but each one was tuned a little different, and he could play some minor chords over here, he could play an augmented chord over there, and they were trying to duplicate what Benny Goodman and Glenn Miller and some of those big bands were doing, because that was the songs that they were playing back in those days. You didn't have a differentiation between country music, western music, pop music. It was all this music, and everybody tried to play the same songs. Anyway, during that time, they progressed up to the point where they had 4 necks on their steel guitars. Well, here, 2 more out there. And the big boys, Leon McAuliffe had one, Noel Boggs, many of the guys had these 4-neck steel guitars. But it took 2 men and a boy and a crane lift to get them on the stage, you know, but they did it. But anyway, what they did was develop a different kind of a sound. And one of the guys that came in after Leon went off to the war and came back, Leon came back from World War II and formed his own band, and Bob hired another steel guitar player and got started, a guy named Herb Remington. And Herb became an icon and is still an icon today in our business. And one of the songs that he wrote was Remington Ride. And I'm going to ask Jimmy to play Remington Ride for us. Just a great steel guitar song.
1, 2, 1.
like I mentioned earlier, they had the steel guitar players had got all the way up to 4 necks, and they'd got to different tunings on every one of those 4 necks, and they'd start a song and they'd start off maybe over here, and they'd play maybe 4, 6, 8 bars over here, then they'd jump over here and play 2 or 3 bars, then over here. They were jumping back and forth. And of course, there were a lot of people in the world who were trying to get the steel guitar down because it became a very popular instrument because of the sounds that they could do, the little slides and the glitches and so forth, etc. that you could do on steel guitar that you couldn't do on many other instruments. It was sort of unique from that standpoint. And a lot of people were very interested. A lot of musicians were very interested in it. And so there was a fellow in Nashville, back at the Grand Ole Opry, playing with the various groups there. And I guess, these guys, they're probably woodshedding in the basement someplace, or got a hold of some guy that was somewhat of a machinist, and they got these ideas together. And he came up with a steel guitar that he had some pedals on it. Like you see these rods coming down from our guitars here. These are going down to pedals. And you could take that pedal, and instead of having to move your bar way up and down the neck, you could kind of press on that pedal, and you could go from like that C to that F or whatever without jumping around all over the guitar or going from this neck to that one. And it had a really unique thing about it. And so the singers in Nashville at that particular time, they heard this guy playing it. The gentleman's name was Bud Isaac, and he did some great, great things. Bud is still alive today. I think he lives down in Yuma, doesn't he, Red? Still down in Yuma, he and his wife. He does a little bit of entertaining, but Bud is getting up in years, but he's still a great, great musician. He had to be a great, great musician there to come up with the innovations and the styling and the tuning that he used when he put that pedal on his steel guitar. But it became very unique for the fellows in Nashville area, and some of them wanted to utilize that on a recording. And one of the very first recordings that really made it big with this pedal on the steel guitar was a guy by the name of Webb Pierce. I don't know how many of you remember Webb. Webb was a very, very fine singer, and he was kind of an icon in Nashville at that particular time on the Grand Ole Opry show. And he recorded a song called Slowly. I don't know how many of you will remember this song. It was back in, the early 50s, I think he done this. Probably, 51, 2, 3, somewhere in there. I was just a kid. I didn't remember it very well. But anyway, I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to sing that song for you, and I want you to hear how Bud played that on the steel guitar. And so we'll do it for you. Key of G, guys, if you... Jimmy, give me that old... Slowly I'm falling more in love with you. Slowly you're winning a heart that can't be true. Now I can't hide my feelings no matter what I do. But slowly I'm falling more in love with you. Now more and more I need you, want you by my side. More and more I love you as each day passes by. No need to hide my feelings, for it's so plain to see that slowly I'm falling more in love with you. Here's Pat to play one for us on the steel guitar. you by my side. More and more I love you as each day passes by. No need to say I love you. It's so plain to see that slowly I'm falling more in love with you. For slowly I'm falling more in love with you. Great old Webb Pierce song, and it really brought the pedal steel guitar into the world. Anyway, sure. We were talking about Bud Isaac and the advent of the pedal steel guitar, and Nashville, of course, was coming into its own. For many, many years, I know when I was growing up and we were playing Western Swing back in Texas and Oklahoma and places like that, we would not listen to WSMS or WSM, the Nashville station with the Grand Ole Opry. That was a sin. My goodness, that was worse than cussing. You just didn't listen to that radio station because, you know, we called them hillbillies and all that sort of stuff. But they kept pushing and pushing, and pretty soon they got a foothold into the world of the swing music and things like that, with Bud Isaac coming along with a pedal steel guitar. And then the first thing you knew, we were playing some pedal steel guitar out in Oklahoma and Texas also. But one of the things that steel guitar became was one of the premier backup instruments for the vocalist. And you just didn't sell a record from Nashville or any place else if you didn't have a steel guitar playing backup. I mean, there were so many greats, Jerry Bird, I can't even think of them this morning, all the great ones that came out of Nashville along with Bud Isaac. Buddy Emmons, I might pause there and say he was probably the greatest steel guitar player I think that I ever heard in my life. Just an outstanding individual. He passed away a couple of weeks ago, and you know, condolences to Buddy's family and all that. But anyway, these guys developed a sound, and for backing up its vocalist, and we have a lady here in the house that just sings a great song. And this is a great song, and it demonstrates to you somewhat what the sounds of the steel guitar could do and how they could help a vocalist get through it. And if we could get Christina Brizendine to come up and sing a song, we would really love that.
Here she comes.
Christina's going to do a song for us that the late, great Don Sears did, along with a steel guitar player they call Papa John. Papa John was one of the best steel guitar players that lived in Nashville for many years, and he recorded all those years, all those great songs you heard from Conway Twitty through the years. Papa John was on all those recordings, and strictly backup. Conway never featured Papa John very much, but he didn't have to because everybody knew when Papa John played, he was going to be great.